The forest doesn't roar, it doesn't scream. It waits. On a crisp October morning in 2022, 28-year-old Daniel Whitaker walked into the shadow of Mount Rainier with nothing but a pack, a camera, and the promise of quiet. He wasn't running from life. He was searching for something he couldn't quite name. But when he failed to return, when his silver Subaru sat untouched at the trailhead, unease began to spread. His brother reported him missing. His father drove out to the mountain, staring into the endless timberline that had swallowed his son whole. Search teams combed the trails, drones scanned the canopy, dogs tracked the mud until the scent dissolved. Nothing. Not a footprint, not a torn scrap of fabric. It was as if Daniel had stepped into the trees and been erased. For 18 long months, the mountain offered no answers, until climbers stumbled on something suspended high above the forest floor. Something that would twist this story from a missing person case into one of the strangest, most unsettling mysteries Mount Rainier has ever held. Before we dive deeper, if stories like this pull you in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Share this with a friend who loves a mystery, because trust me, you'll both be debating this one by the end. And don't forget to drop your theory in the comments, because no one has cracked this case yet. Daniel Whitaker wasn't the kind of man who sought chaos. He craved quiet, the kind of stillness where the world finally loosened its grip. At 28, his life was already etched in restraint. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't careless. Friends said Daniel carried himself like someone born half in this world, half in another. A hiker at heart, but one who respected the woods like an elder, not an enemy. Daniel's father described him as disciplined, a son who showed up early for everything. His brother remembered how Daniel could sit beside a campfire for hours, watching sparks climb, saying nothing, as if he understood silence more than words. His uncle often remarked that Daniel seemed tuned to a different frequency. He was social when needed, but reserved by nature. Not unfriendly, just distant, as though the forest whispered things only he could hear. When his 5-year relationship ended earlier that spring, he didn't explode outward like others might. He folded inward. He sold his apartment in Tacoma, moved closer to the foothills, and embraced solitude with unsettling calm. He stopped posting on social media. He carried his Nikon camera on long solo hikes, snapping images of fog-draped valleys and mossy stones. But he never shared them. Not with friends, not even with his brothers. When asked by his grandfather how he was holding up, Daniel only replied, "I just need to get my head right." It wasn't dramatic, wasn't dire, just honest. No one pressed further. That October morning, Daniel packed carefully. A mid-sized pack, a compact tent, a small stove, freeze-dried meals, journal, camera, and knife. No satellite phone, no partner, just him, the mountain, and the quiet he pursued. The ranger who signed him in remembered nothing unusual, just a polite young man pointing toward Ohanapekosh, a rugged stretch of trail, overgrown and rarely traveled. Daniel left with confidence, his silver Subaru parked neatly at the trailhead. Conditions that day were nearly perfect. Mid-60s, light clouds, no storms forecast. For Daniel, the air felt like an invitation. The mountain wasn't roaring, it was whispering, calm and steady, drawing him deeper. He'd mentioned this trail before at a family dinner. His brother remembered it. Daniel wanted to complete the loop solo, to push further into the less-traveled paths before the winter closed them. It was his unfinished promise. The Ohanapekosh area wasn't easy. Switchbacks disappeared into brush. Elevation gains burned the knees. The mossy volcanic rock tested balance. It wasn't dangerous, but it was unforgiving. A place where solitude could feel like isolation in seconds. But Daniel wasn't new to the challenge. He had a decade of backcountry experience. He knew when to conserve energy, when to set camp, when to turn back. He wasn't a thrill seeker. He was a practitioner of patience. His brother Michael often said Daniel wasn't chasing adventure so much as chasing stillness. For him, the forest wasn't a conquest, Michael once said. It was like church. Only his sermons came from wind through trees. His father agreed. Daniel was steady, rarely impulsive. If he made a decision, it was considered, thought through, almost ritualistic. That's what made his disappearance unbearable. Men like Daniel didn't just vanish, not without leaving something behind. Yet, that's exactly what he did. He left no scraps, no trail markers, no gear scattered behind. He entered the trees as if the ground itself opened and swallowed him, erasing every trace. For 18 long months, nothing surfaced. Not a campsite, not a shoe print, not even a rumor worth chasing. To his family, the silence was a scream. For the mountain, it was indifference. Daniel's brother visited the trailhead often, staring into the dense wall of pines, hoping for some shift, some sign, some scrap of truth. His father returned too, searching for meaning in bark, stone, and mist. Men who loved Daniel carried the weight differently. Some clung to hope, others to memory. But all of them agreed on one thing. Daniel hadn't gone into those woods to disappear. He'd gone to find something. It began as nothing more than a missed message. Daniel told his brother he'd be back by Sunday night. When the hours slipped by without a word, unease began seeping into his family's bones. By Monday morning, alarm had grown. Daniel's brother knew him better than anyone. He wasn't careless. He always checked in. Even a short hike ended with a simple "made it back." Silence wasn't his style. His father called his phone repeatedly. Straight to voicemail, every time. Not even a single ring. That quiet hum of an unanswered line became a sound none of them could forget. By Tuesday, the family had contacted authorities. A ranger at Mount Rainier National Park paused when he heard Daniel's name and details, a pause long enough to suggest he'd taken calls like this many times before. Protocol launched quickly. Within 48 hours, the search began in earnest. First, a sweep of the Laughing Water Creek trailhead where Daniel's Subaru sat. Neatly parked, locked, keys hidden inside, as if waiting for his return. Inside the vehicle, investigators found granola wrappers, a water bottle, and a napkin scrawled with Daniel's handwriting. It read, "Be back Sunday night. Should be quiet." Nothing dramatic. Just his usual shorthand for peace. Search teams fanned outward from the trailhead. Rangers, rescue workers, and volunteers, all men who knew the forest's dangers, formed tight grids. Dogs sniffed through moss and riverbanks, while helicopters swept overhead with thermal scanners slicing through cloud cover. For 3 straight days, they pressed deeper into the forest. The air thickened with tension. Tracks appeared briefly along a muddy section, then vanished, swallowed by earth. Beyond that point, Daniel seemed to simply dissolve. No broken branches, no scattered gear, not even a dropped wrapper. It was as if he'd been lifted off the ground entirely. The searchers exchanged glances, each quietly thinking the same unspoken thought. By the 4th day, hope slipped into dread. Men on the search knew the statistics. 72 hours was the threshold. After that, survival chances in the wilderness plummeted, even for experienced hikers. The mountain rarely forgave. Daniel's brother refused to leave. Each dawn, he stood at the trailhead, binoculars in one hand, coffee in the other, watching the tree line as though his brother might step out at any moment. His father stayed nearby, too, silent, pacing, fists tight in his pockets. It was a cruel waiting game, holding on to logic while the forest whispered only absence. The mountain gave nothing back. By the 5th day, the search effort widened. Helicopters roared overhead, raking the canopy for any sign of life. Men scoured ridges and valleys, calling his name into a silence that seemed almost deliberate. Nothing. Daniel's disappearance wasn't just baffling, it was clean. Too clean. Search veterans muttered under their breath that something about this case felt wrong. A man could vanish, yes, but vanish without trace? That was rare. The family was shown items pulled from his car. His journal sat folded in the glove compartment, ending mid-sentence. Sometimes I feel like the silence isn't empty. It's nothing more. Just unfinished thought. Next to it, a black and white photograph. Daniel faintly smiling before a snow-dusted tree line. On the back, unfamiliar handwriting spelled 5 chilling words. I need to go, D. His brother stared at it in disbelief. 2 hikers eventually came forward, claiming they had spotted someone resembling Daniel stepping off trail the day he vanished. Backpack slung low, boots steady. Deliberate steps into dense brush, as though following something unseen. Investigators pressed the hikers for detail. Neither could explain why they hadn't reported it sooner. They assumed the man knew his route, yet now that fleeting glimpse carried weight heavy enough to haunt. Beyond that supposed sighting, nothing else came. Experienced trackers combed the spot. No bent grass, no residual trail, no evidence of struggle. Just trees, unyielding, towering. Daniel had crossed some invisible threshold, one that maps couldn't mark. The search for Daniel Whitaker didn't begin small. Within days, it swelled into one of the largest coordinated efforts Mount Rainier had seen in years. Men with experience in search and rescue converged. Helicopters flew low, scanning ridges and valleys with thermal imaging. Ground teams moved in grids, step by deliberate step, marking sections of the forest. Dogs barked into the silence, noses pressed to damp earth. Daniel's brother joined them, hiking alongside strangers who now carried his burden. He refused to wait on the sidelines. He wanted to feel the same ground his brother had walked across. His father watched from the trailhead, pacing, refusing to rest. Every time a helicopter passed overhead, he stared upward, almost expecting his son to be visible through a clearing, waving desperately for rescue. Days turned into a blur. The weather remained clear, the kind of calm that almost mocked the urgency below. The forest was indifferent, standing ancient and immovable, offering no hints to the desperate men beneath. By day 10, exhaustion etched itself across every face. Boots were torn, skin blistered, eyes red from scanning endless bark and moss. Yet still, nothing. Not a shoe print, not a fragment of gear. Daniel's uncle joined midway, flying in from another state. He strapped on his boots and followed rangers into the ravines. His voice cracked each time he called out Daniel's name into the emptiness. The mountains seemed to consume sound. Voices carried only a short distance before dissolving. It was as though the forest refused to echo, refusing to give the family any sense of connection. One ranger admitted quietly that in decades of search operations, he'd never seen a case so spotless. Most missing men left chaos behind, dropped food, torn clothing, disturbed brush. Daniel left nothing but mystery. By the second week, whispers began circulating among the searchers. Some suggested Daniel hadn't wanted to be found. Others thought something darker might be at work. His brother overheard and bristled, refusing to accept it. For him, this wasn't just a search. It was a covenant. A brother doesn't vanish without leaving truth behind. He believed Daniel's silence wasn't chosen, it was imposed, and the forest knew how. As days stretched into weeks, volunteers rotated out. Fresh men rotated in. Still, the rhythm of failure remained constant. Sweep after sweep, valley after valley, nothing. The woods swallowed their efforts whole. Daniel's grandfather came to the mountain once, standing quietly at the edge of a search zone. He didn't enter the woods. He simply watched, hat in hand, as though paying silent respect to an unseen grave. For 30 days, the operation pressed forward. Helicopters cut across clouds. Dogs worked until they grew tired and restless. Men burned through maps, fuel, and hope. Yet Daniel remained missing, absent from every angle. Then, one day, a ranger stumbled on something, a torn backpack strap snagged on a branch. Mud caked around the area. Below it, the scorched remnants of a compact stove, the same brand Daniel carried. The men froze. Finally, something tangible. Yet it was incomplete. No journal, no food, no trail of belongings. Just fragments, left as if deliberately placed, not naturally lost. The forest was teasing them. The official report called the site inconclusive. No signs of animal predation, no evidence of a fall. Just fragments. To his family, it was almost cruel, like being handed a puzzle missing every piece. By the end of the month, the search was scaled back. Helicopters grounded, dog teams recalled. For Daniel's brother and father, the retreat felt like betrayal. The mountains still stood. Their son still waited. The silence became heavier than any answer. For men who had known Daniel, the absence spoke louder than explanation. It was as though the mountain had taken him, and for now, refused to give him back. When official searches ended, silence didn't. The forest may have gone still, but conversations about Daniel's fate began to grow louder. Forums, podcasts, and late-night campfire talks all circled the same unshakable question. What really happened to Daniel Whitaker? The first theory was the simplest. Daniel had chosen to disappear. Men online argued that the breakup earlier that year had broken something in him, and this hike was really a farewell. Some believed he'd staged the entire thing. The car, the napkin note, even the journal. Perhaps he had slipped beyond the ridge into a new life, leaving only fragments behind for others to chase. Daniel's brother rejected that idea completely. He knew his brother's patterns, his loyalty, his sense of duty. A man like Daniel didn't simply abandon those who trusted him. That wasn't in his bones. Another theory grew darker. Suicide, hidden beneath a cloak of solitude. Men speculated that Daniel had sought peace in the forest's embrace, deciding to vanish quietly rather than face the life that weighed on him. His father couldn't accept that. He told reporters plainly, "My son wasn't running to die. He was searching to live. There's a difference." His words cut sharply against those who painted the story otherwise. Other men in online circles suggested something more sinister. Foul play. Perhaps a drifter, a hunter, or someone who knew the trails better had crossed paths with Daniel. An encounter gone wrong, lost in silence. Theories of murder gained traction when details about the torn strap and stove fragments were shared. They didn't look random. They looked deliberate, almost placed. Some believed another man wanted Daniel to vanish. But the speculation that echoed the loudest was older, passed among rangers, locals, and seasoned hikers. They called it the Rainier Triangle, a stretch of wilderness where men had disappeared without a trace before Daniel ever arrived. From Paradise to Carbon River, strange vanishings were whispered about. Hikers never returned. Campsites stood abandoned. No gear, no bodies, just void. Some explained it with weather and unstable terrain. Others hinted at something far stranger. Stories drifted into the realm of the uncanny. Lights in the trees, voices in the fog. A forest that didn't just hide men, but kept them. Legends older than any official search log. Daniel's uncle heard those rumors too, but he shook his head. He respected the woods, he told searchers once. He wouldn't have treated them carelessly. If the mountain took him, it wasn't by mistake. Still, investigators had no clear direction, no footprints, no evidence of struggle, no body. Without tangible answers, theories sprouted like moss on stone. Each man who studied the case chose the one that fit his fears. For some, Daniel was a runaway. For others, a victim. For others still, the mountain itself was the culprit. An indifferent force that consumed without remorse, offering only silence where once there was a man. The family faced these theories like daggers. His brother avoided them, refusing to read forums. His father occasionally scanned them late at night, searching desperately for anything useful, even among the noise and superstition. The haunting part wasn't just that Daniel vanished. It was how completely he vanished. Men leave trails, boots scuff rock, hands snap twigs. Even animals leave traces. Yet here was a man erased, as though never present. Theories became stories, and stories became legends. Around Rainier, some men started avoiding certain trails. Others sought them out, daring to test fate. All carried Daniel's name with them, whether in curiosity or in caution. As time passed, the silence around Daniel's disappearance didn't shrink. It grew louder. Without a body, every theory felt plausible. Without proof, every speculation thrived. The mystery became less about what was found and more about what wasn't. And for the men who loved him, that was the heaviest burden of all. Not knowing, not silence, not loss, but carrying a question with no answer, a door that refused to close. For 18 months, Daniel's family endured silence. Then, in May of 2024, two climbers scaling a remote bluff stumbled across something that would finally break it, a discovery neither of them would ever forget. At first, they thought it was discarded gear. A dark shape hung high in the branches, swaying gently in the mountain breeze. But as they drew closer, their voices faltered. It wasn't equipment. Suspended 30 feet off the ground was a human body, thin, shriveled, preserved by the cold. The climbers froze in horror. One turned away and vomited, while the other whispered Daniel's name. Rangers arrived quickly, sealing off the scene. The recovery was delicate, involving pulleys and a helicopter lift. The moment they saw the boots, the jacket, and the Nikon camera, their suspicions hardened. It was Daniel. His father was notified first. The words landed heavy, like stone. His brother received the call soon after, standing silent for several minutes before replying. Closure had come, but not the kind anyone prayed for. The condition of the body deepened the mystery. Daniel's clothes were intact. His body, though mummified, showed no signs of violent trauma. But his feet were bare, his boots carefully placed at the base. Even stranger, Daniel's hands were bound with paracord, not tightly but loosely, not so symbolic they seemed theatrical, enough to suggest restraint yet not enough to hold a struggling man. It was a gesture, not necessity. Beneath the tree, on a flat patch of moss, sat Daniel's driver's license and his dead phone, both perfectly positioned, centered, untouched, as if deliberately placed for the world to find. The medical examiner listed the cause of death as asphyxiation, consistent with hanging. But the manner of death? Undetermined. Suicide didn't fit neatly. Murder lacked evidence. Accident? Impossible. Nothing about the scene made sense. Investigators circled the tree, searching for clues. It was an old Douglas fir, branches sparse, trunk smooth. No footholds, no ladder marks, no ropes or gear nearby. How had Daniel been lifted so high? The surrounding bluff was remote, almost inaccessible. Even seasoned rangers admitted they'd rarely ventured there. No sign of camping, no fire pits, no discarded supplies. Just Daniel, suspended unnaturally, like the forest had chosen the spot. One ranger quietly told colleagues, "It's like the woods kept him until it decided not to." Another, more blunt, muttered a single word: impossible. None of them could explain how a man ended up there. Daniel's brother examined his boots, perfectly aligned, facing north. They weren't muddy. They weren't tossed. They were placed. Such precision didn't belong to chaos. It belonged to design, to intention, to something waiting to be decoded. His father focused on the paracord. He said softly, "This isn't restraint. This is message." He couldn't shake the sense that the knots weren't meant to bind Daniel, but to symbolize something older, stranger. Investigators studied every inch. No footprints, no drag marks, no disturbed soil. The scene looked staged, precise, curated like a display. A man presented as much as he was discovered. It reeked of ritual. Even more chilling was how undisturbed the body remained. No animal bites, no scavenger damage, no insect activity. Nature had spared him, preserved him, almost as though it was complicit in keeping him intact. For his brother, the discovery didn't answer questions. It multiplied them. How did Daniel end up 30 feet in the air without equipment? Why were his belongings placed like offerings? And why had the mountain waited 18 months? His father later told a reporter, "The only thing worse than finding no body is finding one that gives you nothing. My son's death isn't a conclusion. It's another beginning, another question." And so, what should have been an ending became the most haunting chapter yet. Daniel Whitaker had been found, but not returned. The forest hadn't released him. It had revealed him, and only on its own terms. As rangers secured Daniel's body, a young junior ranger spotted something wedged high in the branches above. A faint glint of plastic caught his eye, just a corner of a weathered bag. Climbing carefully, he retrieved a zip-locked pouch, fogged from time, but still sealed. Inside were 6 torn, yellowed pages, handwriting scratched across them in shaky lines. It was Daniel's. The discovery stunned everyone. The first page was dated October 15th, 2022, one day after Daniel vanished. The opening words were simple, chilling. I heard them again last night. No explanation, no build-up, just the line, abrupt and raw. Another page contained an unsettling thought. The trees are watching, not all of them, just the tall ones, the ones that never move, even when the wind does. The handwriting slanted, uneven, smeared in places. 2 sketches filled another sheet. One showed twisted limbs, like branches shaped into something humanoid. The other revealed a figure distorted, arms too long, mouth dark and void. Beneath it, Daniel wrote, "Not human. Never was." His brother was shown the drawings. He stared, silent, shaking his head. "That wasn't Daniel," he muttered. "That was something else speaking through him." To him, his brother's fear felt foreign, unnatural, like possession. Another line stood out. "It's not a place you go. It's a place that finds you. I thought I came here, but I was brought." The words dripped with unease. Further entries grew frantic. Letters slanted, ink smeared. "They don't like light," one line read. Another, "They wait until the mind opens." Paranoia, desperation, or perhaps something deeper, an experience Daniel could barely describe. The final page chilled investigators. It held just one sentence, scrawled unevenly. "If you find this, it's already too late." That was all. A final cryptic warning left hanging in uncertainty. The pages were sent to the FBI. Tests confirmed Daniel's fingerprints, DNA, and handwriting. No other prints, no substances, no tampering. They were his words alone, words sliding into fear, paranoia, and haunting suggestion. Daniel's father read the journal once, his hands trembling. Afterward, he refused to open it again. He told reporters, "That wasn't my son writing at the end. Something got to him out there." His brother was more blunt. That was Daniel's body, but not Daniel's voice. Something had hollowed him out. He believed firmly his brother encountered something alive in that wilderness, something no investigation could catalog. Investigators debated the meaning. Was it psychosis triggered by isolation, a mind unraveling in silence? Or was Daniel documenting something real, something inexplicable, a phenomenon that stalked the forest unseen but deeply felt? Skeptics leaned on logic. They argued Daniel's breakup, isolation, and obsessive pursuit of quiet had left him fragile. The woods didn't need monsters. They just needed time and solitude to twist a man's thoughts. Yet others pointed at the placement of the journal, high in the branches, nearly impossible to reach. How had Daniel, with no climbing gear, secured them there? Why were they preserved so deliberately? The symbolism unsettled even seasoned rangers. Loose bindings on his wrists, boots aligned facing north, belongings beneath his body, and now writings stashed above. Every element looked arranged, like a performance. But arranged by whom? Daniel's uncle summed it best. Those pages weren't meant for us to find right away. They were left like seeds, waiting to be discovered long after he was gone. It sounded less like accident, more like design. The journal didn't close the mystery. It split it open wider. For every man who read those pages, the silence of the forest grew heavier. Whatever Daniel faced out there, it refused to stay buried. And so, instead of clarity, his words delivered something else. Dread. A legacy of fear, scrawled on yellowed pages, warning anyone who dared step too far into the same woods that erased him. The discovery of Daniel's body and journal triggered a deeper investigation. Law enforcement, forensic teams, and federal agents gathered reports, photographs, and autopsy notes. Yet the more evidence they collected, the fewer answers they found. The coroner's findings were blunt, death by asphyxiation consistent with hanging. But the manner? Undetermined. Suicide couldn't be proven. Homicide lacked evidence. Accident was implausible. Every box they tried to check unraveled under scrutiny. Daniel's wrists bore paracord bindings, but they were loose, almost ceremonial. They looked more like a message than restraint. Investigators circled the detail repeatedly, unsettled by its strange lack of practical purpose. His boots, carefully placed beneath the tree, aligned north. Investigators photographed them dozens of times, hoping perspective might reveal logic. None came. The placement wasn't panic or accident. It was intention. But whose intention? Then came the journal. Forensic teams confirmed Daniel had written every word. But the imagery, paranoia, and cryptic warnings didn't sound like him. His brother said flatly, "That wasn't my brother's voice at the end." Agents considered mental decline. Isolation in the wilderness can trigger breaks in perception. But Daniel's notes didn't show confusion. They showed clarity wrapped in fear. His words weren't scattered. They were direct, chilling, intentional. One ranger told colleagues the scene felt staged, curated, like a display. "It's like someone wanted us to find him eventually, but not too soon." That eerie possibility hung heavier than any official explanation. Investigators found no footprints near the site, no drag marks, no climbing gear, no scuffed bark. Daniel couldn't have ascended the tree himself, but no evidence of another man existed either. It was contradiction embodied. Daniel's father demanded answers. He sat through briefings, studied every report. Each time, officials shrugged, admitting the evidence told two different stories, one of a man alone and one of someone, or something, else present. The FBI ran simulations. None fit. A staged suicide? Unlikely. A ritual killing? No suspects. A voluntary act? Impossible without climbing gear. They filed the case under undetermined. But the word felt like surrender. Daniel's brother pressed harder. He met investigators face to face, demanding they explain how a careful man ended up 30 feet in a tree with belongings arranged like offerings. Each explanation felt hollow, built on speculation. Forensic experts tested the journal ink. It matched Daniel's supplies. No tampering. His handwriting grew frantic but authentic. Whatever he described, whether hallucination or reality, he truly believed it. That belief unsettled investigators more than anything. The contradictions piled higher. Preserved body, untouched by animals. Journal hidden high. Boots aligned. Phone and ID centered beneath. Every piece was too clean, too deliberate, defying randomness. The forest had given a scene sculpted, not scattered. Skeptics leaned toward suicide. They argued Daniel's writings reflected a spiraling mind, one unraveling in solitude. But his brother rejected it. He didn't write like a man giving up. He wrote like a man hunted. His father agreed. My son wasn't careless, and he wasn't hopeless. He was terrified. There's a difference. That line became the family's stance. Daniel didn't surrender. Something closed in on him. Even investigators admitted unease. One called the site the cleanest mess I've ever seen. Another said, every clue pointed somewhere, but together they pointed nowhere. It was a puzzle built to remain unsolved. The official conclusion, filed weeks later, was simple. Cause of death? Hanging. Manner? Undetermined. It was the only box left unchecked, the only word that fit. Uncertainty. Daniel's file closed, but the silence didn't. For his brother and father, closure never came. Instead, questions grew. Why this tree? Why those bindings? Why the journal pages? The investigation ended not with resolution, but with a void, a wound carved into the mountain itself. After Daniel's case was closed, whispers around Mount Rainier only grew louder. Rangers spoke cautiously. Hikers traded stories. Locals muttered in bars that the mountain wasn't empty. It was aware, watching with patience no man could match. Daniel's father told reporters he couldn't bring himself to return to the park. It took my son, he said, and I don't think it gave him back. His grief lingered, sharp and raw. His brother avoided the trails, too. He deleted Daniel's number, but kept the last voicemail saved. At night, he sometimes replayed it, listening to a voice that once felt certain, steady, unshakable. Other men carried Daniel's name into legend. Forums buzzed with theories. Campfire circles turned his story into warning. Some saw him as victim, others as messenger. Everyone agreed his fate wasn't ordinary disappearance. Not long after his body was recovered, 2 more solo hikers went missing in the same quadrant. Both seasoned, both healthy, both men. Neither left behind campsites or clues. Silence became the common denominator. Locals called that stretch cursed. Old men said the forest there didn't like disturbance. Younger rangers admitted something about the atmosphere felt off, like static in the air, thick, pressing, unwilling to let go. One ranger described faint humming between trees. Another spoke of seeing lights flicker low in the fog, always just out of reach. The accounts varied, but unease tied them together like invisible thread. Daniel's uncle, speaking quietly to a journalist, said, "Some places don't give answers. They give warnings. My nephew's death was one of them. That wasn't an end. That was a reminder. The reminder was simple but heavy. The wilderness isn't just landscape. It's alive in ways men don't always understand." Daniel had gone seeking peace, but instead encountered something ancient, waiting, older than explanations. The details refused to fade. Boots aligned facing north, wrist bindings loose, symbolic, a phone and ID carefully placed below, a journal hidden high. No animal bites, no random scattering, a curated mystery. Investigators called it undetermined, but those who hiked Rainier afterward called it something else: design. The scene hadn't just happened, it had been arranged, like a silent performance with Daniel as unwilling centerpiece. His brother believed his words. He wasn't suicidal. He wasn't careless. He was terrified. That means something found him. Those words echoed through every conversation, haunting like the forest silence that consumed Daniel. For his father, the pain was less about unanswered questions and more about knowing answers might never come. "Some mysteries you solve," he said. "Others you carry. Daniel's is one you carry forever." And so the mountain stood, towering, fog-draped, timeless. Tourists hiked its trails, unaware they walked through corridors where men vanished. Meanwhile, locals avoided certain paths, saying softly, "That part of the forest waits." Legends grew. Some swore the Rainier Triangle claimed men who sought solitude. Others spoke of rituals hidden in the pines. Still others muttered about things older than the mountain itself, patient, unseen, always watching. The silence pressed hardest at dusk. Rangers reported feeling watched. Campers whispered of footsteps behind them, only to turn and find nothing. The mountain offered beauty, but it carried something heavier, something unseen. Daniel's story didn't end with a file stamped closed. It lingered in the spaces between trees, in the fog that refused to lift, in the hush that pressed down on every man who entered. And perhaps that's the final truth. The mountain doesn't roar, doesn't scream. It waits. And sometimes, when a man steps too far into its silence, it notices. And it doesn't always give him back.